I got your powers.
This is Johnny with Tiger Bomb MMA, and today I'm going over UFC Tybura versus Spivak 2, giving you my thoughts and predictions on the entire, 11 bout card. Yeah, taking place in the Apex smaller cage, two heavyweights that are essentially a mirror match between each other for 5 rounds. How enticing this will be. Yeah, overall, it's a card. I'll say it's got some people. Chelsea Chandler is on here. Yana Kunitskaya is on here. Toshimi Kazama is on here. So it's it's a nice little well, let's just feed them some scraps. They'll take anything on a Saturday. So yeah, I'll give you my thoughts on these entire bouts. But before I do that, I wanted to give you my thoughts on the Sandhagen versus Nurmagomedov fight. That entire card itself didn't do too bad on that one. Actually, did very well. I went what's my total? 11 out of 13. I only got 2 wrong. So back to not sucking, which is great. Things are in order. Things are back to the way they should be. Nothing crazy is going on. But I made 5.5 units. A little bit more with the PFL, which I just did like chalk parlay. Ended up doing very nice there. But yeah, it was a somewhat predictable card. I'm not going to lie. And maybe 2 people kind of gave me a bit of a like, I didn't expect that to happen, but I'll give you my thoughts on it now. First fight of the night, we have Sodiq Dumas defeating Dennis Tululin. He essentially did what I thought and what many people thought. Dumas would just be wrestling him, which he did, and Tululin, I was surprised because Tululin at a certain point was just shucking him off him, and he just never capitalized, never really moved forward. Dumas was content just popping him with the jab and then mixing in the takedowns. And Tululin just a little too complacent, and for that reason he won't be back in the UFC, and Dumas will fade him later. Next bout, Jai Herbert defeats Bedoya. What was funny is that Herbert won the first round relatively easily by just being the better fighter. As I predicted, I thought he was going to be the better fighter. I didn't bet him pre-fight because of the worry of Bedoya, who's just a more active guy, throws more strikes. What if he catches Herbert? But it's really hard to catch somebody when you're that elusive, and Herbert showed it. He's a very good fighter. I think a lot of people counted him out skill-wise specifically, and I never did that skill-wise. I counted him out chin-wise for damn sure. You can't trust the guy if he gets hit once, if he's going to fall. But, he showed decent enough recovery here, good chin, never really got hurt. The only thing I didn't like is that he sometimes didn't throw enough, but when he did, he was landing really clean on Bedoya, who has awful defense, but keep him around. Bedoya, that is. He's 0-3 in the UFC, but give him like a Mike Breeden, for God's sakes. Like, give him someone at lightweight that he can beat and he can style on, and he's going to produce fun fights. Like, he's from Peru. We need this guy for the market. Just give him beatable dudes, and that's what kind of bugged me here. I'm like, why are they giving him Jai Herbert? It's a really risky bet if he's not up to the task, and he wasn't here. And I would have scored at 30-27 for Herbert. Maybe the second round you could have given to Bedoya. But what I found funny was that Herbert was like plus 130. That's what I saw. I tried to get the plus 130. I ended up getting plus 115 live. And I'm like, how? He won the first round, and he's doing really well in the second. Yeah, he maybe had like a couple stumbles here and there, like where Bedoya hit him a few times. But Jai was landing the much better strikes, jumped all over that, ended up winning pretty easily. Bedoya, again, keep him around for Jai Herbert. My biggest worry is that he's going to fight somebody where it's kind of similar, like, hey, he is the better fighter everywhere, better striker, better elusive guy, better boxer, but maybe this next guy ends up having a little bit more pop to his punches and actually rocks him, and he'll be like minus 200. That's my biggest worry there. Sam Hughes defeats Dudakova. Dudakova, I think, ended at like minus 170 at one point pre-fight. She ballooned all the way up to like minus 400, and then Sam Hughes took over. I tried to jump on that Sam Hughes plus 400 at one point, but I couldn't. Like, it would not give me that option. And then Sam Hughes just took over round number 2. Dudakova was winning round number 2. She got her to the ground. She gassed out. She let Sam back up. It was just frustrating to see as like a young fighter. Like, dude, shit like this is what's going to lose your undefeated record. She didn't trust her hands. She was doing well on the feet, but she was just relentlessly trying to get that takedown, which against a much fresher runner and Sam Hughes, great cardio, it was just not the play. Sam took over. One judge had it 30-27 for Dudakova. I laughed my ass off at that. It was 29-28 Sam Hughes. It was just a good learning lesson for Dudakova, who I think is the better fighter than Sam Hughes. I think a lot of people that Sam Hughes beats technically are the better fighter, maybe excluding Elise Reed. But for example, that what is her name? That Elise Reed beat, or not Elise Reed, but Sam Hughes by cheating. Amarin. I think Amarin will beat her ass the second time around, just gas management. Same thing here with Dudakova. She learned it's a gas management issue. She'll learn from there. Guram Kutateladze. I had him and Shamil as a base for my 3-leg parlays, and I was worried my ass off when he got dropped. He looked like a shell of himself in that first round. It was really pissing me off because I knew he was the better fighter. I knew from the bat. Like, I knew it. I think Jordan knew it. The only person who didn't know it in that first round was Guram. He fought tentative. He fought awkward. He just didn't have his feet under him. And then he got dropped. He nearly got finished. I was worried my ass off. And I'm like, yo, he needs to start going now. Second round comes out. He wins the second round. He gets a takedown on Jordan, who, to me, that is his biggest kryptonite. He's a guy who's not afraid to take him to the ground because he's got great scrambles, this kid. He's got good boxing. He hits hard. He looked really good against Guram, like a very good fighter. The issue is that just because he looked good against Guram, a very good fighter, and ended up losing, are we going to overvalue Jordan? Because you give him a specific type of matchup, and he's going to lose the same way, get controlled, and his not judges, but his corner really let him down. Although, despite the fact that they told him, hey, you're up 2 rounds, I still think he would have lost the fight. I still think he would have gone for that takedown. He would have gotten reversed. But what proved to me that Guram was the better fighter is that back take. He took his back in the 3rd round. He was super high, slipping off. He pushes himself, adjusts, gets the body triangle. I was like, yo, that to me showed me that Guram has the goods. He's got the goods everywhere, man, but his chin is a little suspect to me right now. It's just he needs to get that confidence back, and I don't know if this was the fight to do it, but Guram, for damn sure, he's not a guy we can bet at like -200 and parlay him up in every single one of your parlays. But yeah, he looked good. Second round going forward. I'm excited to see what's next for Jordan. Like, he's a young prospect. I think this is a good learning lesson for him. It was a fight he was not supposed to win, and he still looked good. But again, be weary, because there's been many a times like a certain Bedoya who looked good in defeat, and then we max bet the shit out of him in his next fight, and he ends up losing. So yeah, Shamil Gadzhiev defeats Don'Tale Mayes. What I found fascinating is that Mayes would land on Gadzhiev. He would look at him like with his mongoloid grill. I'm like, oh, ho, ho, you hit me. I hit you back. Haha. But every time Shamil would hit Mayes, Mayes would react awful. Like he was getting destroyed. I've never seen Mayes get hit like that and react that poorly with one shot. And it showed Gadzhiev has a lot of power in his punches. And that's kind of what I expected from him versus Joe Rosenstrike, but he, just was what it was. I think Shamil, that was the perfect building block. He showed he's a big dude on top, very heavy, not the most exciting guy, but handled business. Two legs down on the parlay. I had two parlays with these two guys. One with One-Eyed Willie, Shira Bullet, which we know that cash, and then another guy that I'll talk about later. Kawi Fernandez defeats Muhammad Yahya. Yahya being the worst fighter in the UFC, essentially. If Kawi didn't beat him in the first round, I would have been uber disappointed. He handled him exactly like he should have. And it didn't give Yahya like, had Yahya survived the second round, maybe his coaches would have been like, hey, have you considered maybe striking with this guy? Maybe throwing punches, checking leg kicks. Oh, a takedown would be interesting. How does that sound? And that maybe he would have been like, yeah, it's a good idea. I'll try that in the second round. But Kawi didn't give him that chance. If Kawi would have fatigued, I think that would have made Yahya a little bit closer here. But again, Yahya didn't fight. He was just there to get knocked out in front of his people, which was sad. But Kawi, -400, not worth it. and frankly, not worth betting him at those odds moving forward. That's one of my biggest worries about this card. Like certain dudes looked amazing. Like if you were to just see Cowie Fernandez in that fight and then just tape that fight for his next fight, and you'll be like, wow, he's a killer. Not quite. But yeah, for Muhammad Yahya, I don't know if he'll stick around. I have no idea. Maybe they'll keep him for another Abu Dhabi or UAE fight card. Who knows? Azamat Mirzakhanov, my second parlay final leg. Now, I am on a treadmill while watching these fights, right? Like, I haven't been able to go out and, like, run on the weekend. So I'm like, screw it. I'll run on the treadmill while watching the fights. And I'm, like, sweating here. Not because of, like, anything Alonzo was doing, but because I needed a knockout here. I needed a knockout from Azamat. I had him minus 210 for the fight to win by knockout or something like that. I don't really remember. And then I had him, that wouldn't have been right. Something like minus something, minus 185 or some bullshit. And then minus 230 for him to win just straight out in that parlay. So when Azamat is like whipping his ass, I'm looking pretty good. I'm like, all right, cool. He's going to win this fight. But then I'm like, yo, you're not hurting him. You're not hurting Menafield. What the fuck? Menafield's eating the punches. And I'm getting a little bit worried that he's not going to cash out my other play on him to win by knockout. Not for him to win by knockout, just that the fight ends by knockout. Either guy could get it. But then the second round comes along where Menafield starts actually engaging a bit. Because, again, I always say Menafield, he's got a big punching power, big right hand, big left hook, and then some grappling. But when he doesn't have any of that, he's just a punching bag, and that was proof here. When he started going forward, is when Azamat was able to counter him, hurt him, and then finish him off. That made me incredibly happy. The kind of retribution, like Menafield has cost me a ton of money in the past, where I know he's not the better fighter than fighter X, yet he pulls it out of his ass. And in this case, he couldn't shitty punch his way out of a win here against me. So I was happy Azamat won. But again, Azamat, what I was most worried about him is him fatiguing, which he did. But I think Menafield just gifted his chin to him by just being a little bit too aggressive again. So we'll see what happens with both these gentlemen, but very happy. My two parlays cashed. Joe Alvarez defeats Elvis Brenner. Now, I didn't bet Alvarez like I intended to because he had ballooned up to like minus 170, minus 190. I didn't like those odds just in case he couldn't stuff those takedowns. He looked great here against Brenner. He didn't look as great as the commentary team was saying, but to me, he looked much improved. He wasn't like, oh my God, he's styling on him, but he was landing cleanly. He was very patient. He wasn't overextending himself. He didn't put himself in positions to get taken down. He was able to get the takedowns stuffed against Brenner. And then Brenner just stayed on the outside and fought terribly. It just was a poor performance from him. He could have drawn it out, but I think there was just too much danger in the clinch, which ultimately, when he got hurt and Joe took advantage, got him in the clinch, kind of put him in the Darce position and started blasting his face with knees. Brutal stuff. But yeah, Joel looked improved as hell. Very impressed by his ability to stay calm and then just put on a show. He got a finish here. He got a bonus. Props to him. Very happy to see a fellow Spaniard start, doing well. Mackenzie Dern defeats Lupita Godinez. Now, I didn't bet Dern immediately. I essentially had to convince myself and be convinced by other people, friends, Discord folk, that Mackenzie was going to win this fight because I knew she had the ability to, but we're just not sure because, again, too many variables. She looked good on weigh-ins. She looked really good on weigh-ins. Very, very good. There were some really good shots here during the fight that the cameraman, I owe him some money, just being like, yo, man, you deserve a tip for the type of shots you were getting when Mackenzie was on mount. Lupita, again, shows that she's always so close to winning, and then she ends up doing something that loses the fight, like not being aggressive or, getting... God, Mackenzie Dern blast doubled her against the cage, lifted her up and got her to the ground. That, to me, was the most significant thing for Mackenzie Dern's improvement as a fighter. I was like, yo, finally you're getting actual takedowns. She did get a judo throw on her. It landed in side control, got the mount in the first round. There was a lot of good stuff from Mackenzie, but she needs to, again, focus on keeping her fucking chin tucked. Other than that, really good. Lupita, she's dropping 2 in a row straight. 2 in a row to jujitsu gals that I just think I hate saying this, but I think she needs to leave the gym that she's at, that Lobo gym with Aldana and the feet girl. What's her name? Grasso. Yeah, the cat lady and the feet girl. Yeah, it kind of like, I don't know if they're just babying her. I think she needs to go somewhere like she needs to go to Fortis MMA so Safe Fayud will just yell at her terrible directions. Maybe that'll help her. But yeah, I think she needs to go to a better gym. I think she needs to see a sports psychologist because sometimes she just drops the ball when she's just far and beyond the better fighter. She had a clear path here and she didn't take advantage. Michael Chiesa defeats Tony Ferguson rear naked choke. That's essentially what needed to happen. Tony did not retire. It really sucked, right? Like Tony really wants to fight. I got an idea. Give him Mike Breeden at lightweight at UFC Noche, and that'd be a great send off for him. I think he'll be happy to retire there. Fucking finishes Mike Breeden, no problem. Puts both gloves down. He's like, that's it for me. See everybody. They need to give Tony a guy he can beat. They need to give him not a guy that's gonna, why are they doing this to Tony? Why are they giving him contender after contender after contender? And then Mike Chiesa, who's a dude, Michael Chiesa, when he was fighting at lightweight, here I'm positive I've told this story. I was in Dallas, or was it, yeah, Dallas, Texas one day for a UFC. It was years ago. I forgot what the main event was. I think it was maybe Stipe versus JDS years ago. And I see Michael Chiesa walking by. And the dude is, again, a lightweight. He was enormous. He was fucking tall. He was huge. And I'm thinking to myself, how does this man make the weight? And I'm like, I'm not a super short guy. I'm like 5'11", nearly 6 foot. But this dude like made me look like a midget. And I'm like, whoa, how is he fighting at lightweight? So he's a big dude. And to give Tony Ferguson that guy at that hydration level really was not a good thing for him. So now he's lost to Gagey, Oliveira, Dariush, Chandler, Diaz, Green, Pimlet, Chiesa. You got to give him somebody that he can beat. Like, give him somebody, please. Give him UFC Noche UFC. Oh, for the love of God. Yeah, Davison Figueiredo defeats Marlon Vera. It was 1-1 going into the third. Figueiredo did, his typical tactics, get takedowns. Then he's the first man to drop Chito Vera, which was surprising as hell to me. Not much more to say. Chito drops down again in the rankings. He's kind of an afterthought now. And it's crazy that he has the only win over Sean O'Malley. Given it, just, I hate to say it because I don't want to say it was a fluke, but it's looking more and more like you can't deny it was a fluke at this point. For Figueiredo, there's talks about him versus Peter Yan. That is going to be the fight. I will continue to fade Figueiredo because I don't think he can keep getting away with this, right? Like, yes, he beat the crap out of Font. He beat the crap out of out grappled. What's his name? Garbrandt. And Vera, my issue here is that Vera didn't start off strong again. And then had he not gotten dropped in that third round, I think he could have won that decision. And he was the final leg on my really dumb $25 I had two parlays, one for 5, one for 20. Beautiful, looking beautiful. Everything won other than Marlon Vera. I essentially thought to myself, hey, I'll just put a bunch of crap that's not going to win, and I'll use that as an excuse to bet Chito. Yeah, that's a good idea, right? Yeah. That way, if Chito loses, well, I'm sure everything would have already lost by then. Turns out that was the opposite. I bet Chito as a way to fill this stupid parlay with crap. Everything won other than Chito. So I was like, all right, cool, whatever. It's only $25, but still, it kind of bummed me out. I would have been up way more. I would have been up like maybe 14 units or so. I'm only up 5.5. But yeah, Figueiredo, I'm interested in that Peter Yan fight for damn sure. And already, spoiler, I'm picking Peter Yan. Shira Bullet here defeated Mikhail Olenjejik. Mikhail looked good pressure-wise. Even got a couple takedowns on Shira Bullet. Yeah, ultimately, though, after round number 1, I actually max bet Shira at like minus 350 to, make some additional money. Not much, because I only had a certain limited amount in my Bovada account. But yeah, he did not look like he was going to lose. He was just too active with the kicks, and some people were saying, "Oh my God, he got exposed by a striker, a boxer, in Mikhail Jacek." I'm like, motherfucker, he's been exposed. Magomedov, Shira, he sucks on the ground. But here's the good thing about him. Let me take a sip of juice real quick. Here's the thing about Shira that no one talks about. Yes, his kicking game is great, but he has the absolute best fence grab in the game. It is so sneaky. The judges literally every time he grabs the fence, they're like, "Oh, he stuffed the takedown. Great, good for him." The best fence grab in the absolute game. That is like a veteran tactic for a guy who's 14 to 0. So yeah, props to Shira for really focusing on that technique. I'm pretty sure he called Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman and be like, "Yo, show me the technique, the forbidden technique." But yeah, Mikhail, he's probably gonna go to bare knuckle. That'd be really fun, where he belongs. Yeah, Umar defeats Corey Sandhagen. I didn't really watch this fight prior to the fight starting. I went and took a shower because again I was on a treadmill the entire time, and I come out. The fights are starting. I'm not really paying attention. Umar's doing some awful stuff. He is going for the takedown really, really early. He's not setting them up properly. He had a too much nervous energy, and I'm like, yo, Corey's gonna catch him with a flying knee or something up the middle because of how Umar is just ducking his head too much. Corey never did that. I was telling people in the Discord, which you should subscribe to the Discord. It's free, and I talk a bunch of shit on there. But Corey, what I was saying is that he is fighting the opposite of what makes him Corey Sandhagen: pressure, boxing, flying techniques. He was too afraid of getting taken down, and Umar took advantage. Umar didn't beat the shit out of Corey. He this was practically sparring, and Umar won this. Umar didn't hurt him. Umar didn't land anything super significant. All he did is take his back, and Corey complied. Like, yep, there it is, take it. Which was depressing, right? Like, if Corey would have done more, had he pressured Nurmagomedov here, who, by the way, I actually just found out are related. He is related to Khabib, so I can officially say that they are cousins because apparently people don't get sarcasm. But yeah, anyways, Corey was just not fighting what he like he needed to. He was again giving up the back to Umar constantly. He proved he can get back up from bottom, but he was just too afraid of getting taken down and looking like he was losing, that he ended up losing because he looked like he was losing. Had he, say, blasted Umar with kicks and flying kneed him and pressured him, and then he got taken down, getting your back taken for a bit and then maybe getting back up, you can still win the round. You can make it more competitive, but Corey just showed that he's not gonna probably ever fight for the title. I really wanted to see that Corey versus O'Malley fight, and now the only way I can probably see it is if O'Malley just has a huge nosedive and we get to see it on like a Apex card or some shit. But yeah, we move forward here to the fight card, the Tybura versus Spivak. What is fascinating about this is that, again, 11 total bouts and nothing really too fascinating other than, for me, the first fight of the night, which I do find fascinating here. We've got Stephanie Luciano versus Talita. I thought it was always Talia Alankar. The Problem Child versus Rohandinha. Apparently they call her that because she somewhat resembles Ronda Rousey. Minus 170 for Luciano. Come back on Alankar is plus 140. So with this fight, it's a rematch from the Contender Series where it was a draw. Both women got a contract that day, and I thought that Luciano, it's hard to say that Luciano deserved it, but had she gotten the finish, she would have 100% deserved it. I still don't think Alankar did. She didn't look all that great. With this fight, to break it down simply, we got a good striker here in Luciano. She is showing a lot of promise, meaning that she's working on her ground game. She hasn't fought since that last fight, where the draw, which was 10 months ago. And I think her biggest issue was inexperience. She's 5-1-1, and just youthfulness, youthful ignorance against a woman who's got a ton of experience in jiu-jitsu, combat jiu-jitsu, or not combat jiu-jitsu, but jiu-jitsu itself, BJJ, black belt. And she was able to single leg her every time, get her to the ground, and she death gassed. Brazilian death gas, come the third round, she got bullied, she got battered. Luciano was stuffing the takedowns well, and Alan Carr. What kind of bugged me is that she was, props to her though, she survived, but she was weaseling her way out of getting finished, which it's hard to hate, but she was holding on to gloves and just doing her damnedest to like hold on to something to engage so that way Luciano couldn't finish her. And I think with that, Luciano's going to learn a lot from it. I think between the two, the much younger girl has the higher ceiling to learn from the previous fight, where Alan Carr, she's never going to be as good of a striker as Luciano. She will probably throw more output to try to like trick her into shooting for that single or trying to get her down to the ground. But if Luciano can stuff takedowns, keep her at the end of her punches, kicks, just fight with more confidence, because when she did get taken down, nothing really negative happened to her. Alan Carr wasn't close to finishing her. Luciano showed decent survivability on the mat. Like, she wasn't outmatched completely, other than just, you know, a short little girl taking her down and controlling her because she's just that much better at jiu-jitsu. But in this case, with Luciano, I'm not interested in betting her. I'm really interested in this fight because I do think that she can finish what she started in round number 3 and finish her in round number 2 or 3. I'm going to pick round number 3 for her to finish Alan Carr. In this particular case, you know, Alan Carr, what she would need to do is practically the same thing except not gas. And if she can not gas, she's got a really good chance to win this one by decision, possibly. I don't want to say submission because I think Luciano showed she was really tough to submit because she's just much taller. She's taller by 5 inches. She's got a huge reach advantage over Alan Carr, 66.5 compared to this 58.5 for Alan Carr. It's just, I think it's still going to weigh on her gas tank because if Luciano, shit, all she would have had to have done is work single leg defense and she's going to be fine. And if, say, Alan Carr does still get those takedowns, I think they're going to be much harder to get, which are going to be more taxing on her cardio, which would probably gas her out a little bit sooner. And Luciano at that point can just wail on her. But it's really dependent on Luciano maturing and learning in those 10 months. Because the older she's going to get, the better she's going to get. Because what I see from her already is pretty damn good. It's just, you know, that last fight, little lapses of judgment. And if you can correct that, I think she's going to look really good here. But it's still a really close fight between two, you know, early on, not experienced MMA gals. But one gal in Alan Carr has a ton of grappling experience, which is like, that's really hard to overcome sometimes. But I'll still go with Luciano here to win. I'm going to say third round TKO. Next bout, we've got Jarno Aarons versus Youssef Zalal. And we've got Zalal minus 350 come back on Aarons. Is mine, did I say plus? Minus 350. Come back on Aarons plus 260. So, both of these people, Aarons and Zalal, they fought competition that essentially looked like punching bags to both men. But the biggest difference to me was that, you know, Aarons, he fought pretty competitively with Stephen Wynn. But Stephen Wynn is just such a limited fighter. He's got boxing, and that's it. He was even trying techniques in that fight against Aarons, like spinning back kicks, because he couldn't do anything to Aarons because Aarons was just the more complete guy. He was just the better boxer on the outside, and he threw better kicks, low kicks and such. And it just made it look really easy for Aarons that there's people talking about like, oh, he might be a good dog here. I don't quite think so. I think Aarons is a tough dude. I think Aarons is skilled, but he's fighting a much more skilled guy in Youssef Zalal. And you can make that argument for Zalal as well. He fought a washed Billy Q. Well, even washed Billy Q is still Billy Q, and I would still take Billy Q to beat Jarno Aarons. The thing is with Zalal, what he presents is his overall game now has improved significantly since his first UFC run. And what made me confident in picking Zalal over Billy Q, which kind of bugged me because a lot of people were on Zalal as well, to the point that when I went to bet him, he was no longer plus money. I was like, motherfucker. So with Zalal is that he is really good. He's got good movement on the outside. He's got great cardio, great kicks. He's a very complete fighter. The issue in the past is that I don't think he understood that himself. I think he just tried primarily to strike, which he's a very good striker, and he was getting out grappled, and he didn't himself initiate the grappling. He's been doing that more so in his interview coming into the fight with Billy Q. He even mentioned that, like, hey, I'm much more mature now. I've come to realize that, like, hey, I'm good everywhere. I got to start implementing this. And then when he did that to Billy Q and submitted him, highly impressed by that. Like, yo, no one does that to Billy Q, washed or not. But it was just overall like impressive as fuck. And even though you go and you see his tape outside the UFC when he was gone, it was still impressive the way he was handling these guys. And you just see the skill set itself, the base skills that he's got. Great movement on the outside, great cardio, good kicks, good move, like everything. The way he took the back of Billy Q was incredibly impressive. For Jarno Aarons, he's limited in so much. He doesn't really move all that well. He can, for damn sure. His cardio is not as good as Zalal. I think on the outside, Zalal is going to be the better guy. He's going to be able to pick apart Jarno Aarons. And eventually, I think Zalal will mix in some takedowns. And I think he's going to actually be able to get Jarno down, control him for a bit. And Jarno's not a bad fighter. Good kickboxing, great uppercut. Best punch that he has is that nasty uppercut. But he's not fighting a punching bag anymore. When you see him fight guys that put up a good fight here, good movement, good kicks, good like shit. The low kicks are probably going to be a huge factor here. Zalal has really good low kicks, calf kicks, and Aaron's got kind of chewed up by Sung Woo Choi with the low kick to the point that he nearly got finished by it. Zalal's going to be the better fighter, the better striker, and I think he's going to style on Aaron's to the point that he's going to finish him in the second round. I think Aaron's is tough. I think Aaron's is really hard to finish by knockout. So I think he's going to take his back, work his jiu-jitsu, and choke him out. And I feel kind of dirty saying that because it's like me, I can picture myself going, he's got a submission. He's going to get another one. It's not really that. I think Zalal, if he mixes things up well enough, he will start working his submissions down the line because I think he's got a pretty good ground game. It's just something he's never really highlighted. And when he feels more comfortable, which I think it's now, he's going to start getting those subs where it's like the least path of resistance, where if it's on the feet, he can still outpoint Jarno. He can probably knock out Jarno, but it's going to be tough to do so. But if he gets him to the ground when he hurts him with a knee or something, rear naked choke. So goes the law round number 2, knockout. I think at this point, minus 350, I'm not loving that line. If I do parlay him, it'll be maybe a unit parlay with somebody, but I'm still not sure about it. Just despite the fact that I think he's gonna win, minus 350 on a guy, I feel like it's overcorrection of the market. Like, oh my god, he just beat Billy Q. Let's fucking make him minus 1,000 against anybody. And I don't think that's the case. I think it should be lined a little bit closer, minus 200 for Zalal, just in case maybe Jarno Aarons does hit him with that drive-by uppercut. But moving on here, we've got Carl Williams versus Jonata Dinez. And I want to be honest, man, I really just wanted to say, oh, Carl Williams wins by decision because Dinez got taken down by Austin Lane. And I was like, nah, like I need to do more research on it. I have to, because everything just wiki capping it, 7-0, Dinez, kickboxer, easily giving up takedowns. It just screams like Carl Williams is going to do what he does every single time. Like, as much as Carl Williams is limited, what he does best is wrestling. He's just focused on that, and he does that pretty damn well. But looking at the tape, the minus 225 on Williams, although tempting to parlay, it can be a bit of a problem in the sense that Carl Williams he's not a dominant grappler. He is not. He is dominant with low-level competition. And let's look at that low-level competition he's been fighting. In the UFC, he comes into the UFC. Who does he fight first? He fights... Well, he fought Jimmy Lawson in the Contender Series, who's a collegiate wrestler himself. Took care of him surprisingly easily, but that was like his style of fight, the wrestling style. He's a much bigger guy than Lawson as well. Defeats Bresky. Bresky can't stuff takedowns, but he can get back up. Rinse and repeat type of performance. Chase Sherman's a mental midget. Justin Tafa. Him beating Justin Tafa was a bit surprising to me because of kind of how it happened. And he took him down for sure, but then Tafa was having success on the feet, stuffing takedowns. And it showed me, okay, he kind of has trouble stuffing, like getting big dudes down who don't just give up takedowns. And then Tafa was winning that second round, and then Tafa threw a stupid head kick that why Tafa, why? That Carl blocked, took him down easily, laid on top of him. He lost that round. Come round number 3, he hurts Carl Williams, gets too close to him, gets taken down, loses the fight. So he's not this unstoppable wrestling machine. I've seen Tafa just push him off of him. Tafa's a big boy. Janada's a big boy as well. He's got clinch experience, kickboxing experience. The reason why I think he might be live here, just might, is possibly after round number 1. Like I just think there's a really good chance here that Dinez, who I feel as if in that fight with Lane, he didn't expect the takedown. I know that sounds stupid, but the way he looked from round number 1 to round number 2 was a little surprising. And that could just be me looking a little bit too much into it, because Lane did exhaust himself. Surprisingly, he didn't do anything to exhaust himself, yet round number 2 was exhausted, dead tired, that Dinez took over and knocked him out. And I had Dinez on a parlay, and when he got taken down that easily, and I mean, it was so simple that it broke my heart. I was like, well, I was at my cousin's 15 or quinceañera, and I'm just like, motherfuck this and motherfuck that, like, get the fuck up. I was not happy, let's just say. And then he survives. He kind of corpses on the bottom, doesn't do much, doesn't exhaust himself. And then when he was aware of the takedown from Austin Lane, he was kind of shucking him off of him. Like, he was, okay, motherfucker, you're going to try to take me down. So he showed that he can stuff takedowns. It's just that if a guy ultimately wants him in the ground, like Carl's going to want to get him, it's going to happen. So what I'm thinking is that if Dinez can survive that first round, if he does get taken down, which I'm assuming he will, he might be live round number 2. At that point, say Dinez gets taken down, he doesn't gas himself out, and Carl's kind of working hard to, like, maybe put some damage on him. Dinez waits for the second round. He comes out. He starts landing his shots. He's an athletic dude. He's 6'4". He's just as big as Carl Williams. He's got way more overall experience, like striking. It's just, again, the takedowns. It's the biggest worry. But my thing is, with Dinez being a big boy, hitting that hard, kind of suspect with his chin, because he does get hit a little bit too much for my liking, for being that much of a, like, accomplished striker or whatnot for Dinez. But if Dinez, who is athletic as hell, does flying knees, head kicks and whatnot, better head kicks than Tafa, if Carl Williams gets pressured and Dinez does stuff a takedown on a slightly more fatigued Carl Williams, I would not be at all shocked of Dinez landing like a flying knee as Carl Williams shoots in for a shitty takedown. So I cannot pick against Williams, because I do think the trend is going to be Williams is winning round number 1 up until maybe Dinez starts taking over, if that happens. So I will pick Williams by a decision, and I am going to look very, very closely at Dinez round number 2 if he makes it to that. Williams is not a big finisher, and Dinez, he knows he's fighting a wrestler here, and I'm expecting him to look slightly better, for the love of God. Just no more easy takedowns, because I like Dinez. I think he's a fun project for the UFC. Like, oh my God, we, like, with Pereira being so Pereira Chama, we want to look at these Brazilian kickboxers and be like, oh shit, another Pereira, just like the other dude in middleweight, whose name I can't remember. But yeah, that's kind of what we want from Dinez. So if he can pass this test, it's going to be like, this guy's going to be fun to watch. But it's also surprising, like, why are they giving him a wrestler? They just give him another striker for him to knock the fuck out. So I'm going to look at Dinez live to see where it goes, because, yeah, we can take him at plus 185 now, but that risk, right? If he gets taken down immediately, plus 300 or whatnot. So I'd rather just kind of be patient. Either take Williams' decision or Dinez by knockout. Moving on, Karol Rosa versus Pannie Kianzad. Odds have it in favor of Rosa, minus 175. Come back on, Kianzad is plus 150. Very simply put, because I don't want to spend too much time on this fight, they're both middle of the pack bantamweights. Karol Rosa, she fluctuates at times, 145, and then bantamweight. Not the best time at 145. She went like 50% up there, 1-1. And she's fought bigger people, stronger girls, not necessarily the best competition compared to each other. They both fought decent enough competition. Kianzad has a loss to the champ. I can't believe I'm saying that, to the champion Pennington, and it's going to be a decision, right? Just to me, I think whoever has more control, eating minutes away against the cage, on the ground, on top, is going to win this fight. I think on the feet, they're both evenly matched striking. Neither really possesses anything significant in the way of power, but maybe Cara Rosa has more power. I thought she looked really good in her fight early against Aldana until Aldana just said, I got to feed my cats. I got to come out here. I got to start landing punches. She ignored the low kicks that Rosa was throwing at her. It was a great fight, I should mention, between Rosa and Aldana, the Mexican cat lady. But yeah, Rosa round number one, attacking the legs. Just ultimately, she fought a better overall boxer. And the thing about Pani, what I liked about her, I've always really respected her, is that she was very limited coming into the UFC, more so just a striker, and has rounded out her game. But she is a type of girl that you can control against the cage. You can control her on the ground a bit. Maybe not do significant damage to finish her. But I think Carol's going to just do that. She's going to find a way to eat these minutes. She'll hold her own on the striking because they're comparable striking. But to me, I think Carol is the top of the heap of the middle of the pack of the bantamweights, where neither girl's ever going to fight for the title. Neither girl's ever going to get close to those talks, even though it's 13 and number 9 in the world. But shit, yeah, that's really it. I think neither girl's ever going to make it to that top of the mountain. But Carol's just going to be one that's a step ahead of these middling girls. So I'll go Carol Rosa by a decision. Next bout, we've got Danny Left Hand to God Barlow versus Nikolai Veretennikov. I have to remember how to say Veretennikov. Veretennikov plus 230, come back on Barlow minus 280. Barlow automatically, I don't think he's worth a shot here, other than you want to take him by knockout. I think he can win by a decision as well. If you can maybe do that, like knockout or decision, that'd probably be the best way to go. But with Danny Barlow, super athletic, very green still, but damn, he's got great pocket punches. Like inside the pocket, he's really quick. He's super speedy, super athletic, super fast, great hands, good power in the left hand. Uber athlete. Not as good of a skilled fighter as I think Veretennikov is. I think Veretennikov has, like, he's got a Sambo background, I believe. Good striker, good in the clinch. It's just that he although being the better overall skilled fighter, he's not necessarily an athlete. He doesn't have anything of note. Watching tape on him, I saw his fight against I'm gonna call him Miles Morales, Michael Morales, in the Contender Series, and he looked pretty good early. He was a favorite in that fight, but I saw Michael Morales after round number 2, after Veretennikov was landing on him, kind of bullying him a bit. And, Morales is kind of known to give away the first round. When Morales started fighting and kind of bullying the bully that is Veretennikov, because he loves moving forward, he loves attacking, he trains at King's MMA, I need to remember to say that. When he started kind of landing on Veretennikov, he made him uber uncomfortable. And to me, I kind of notice a trend with him that he slows down a bit after round number 1. Coming into round number 2, I'm trying to pick my words correctly, because he doesn't gas. He's not like, oh my God, I'm dead. He still fights. It's just compared to round number 1 and round number 2, you can tell that there's some fatigue that is set in, but it's not uber noticeable. But you just see a decrease in his output and a decrease in his pressure. So with that Morales fight, him shooting for a takedown on Morales was like, yo, you can make this dude uncomfortable, that he fights out of composure, because he can grapple for damn sure. It's just he prefers to strike, and he can be a bit robotic sometimes, but he's a solid overall guy. He's a pretty solid fighter. I just think you can beat him to the punch. You can bully him. You can hit him with power to make him uncomfortable, where he starts shooting for takedowns. And Danny has shown some decent takedown defense, especially with Quinlan, who only shot for 1, but the quickness in his sprawl was impressive. It's just that if they're in the clinch, Veretennikov is a strong guy. I think he can land some good knees there. He has good clinching strikes. But what ultimately sealed it for me for Danny Barlow, despite the fact that I think that Danny it's a really tough fight for him, short notice or not, is that with that inexperience, I think that Danny will eventually catch Veretennikov. I'm thinking the second round. If he doesn't catch him in the second or third, I think he can lead to a decision. He just has a really good output, and especially when a guy's being aggressive towards him, I think he's really good at counter striking. But what I was mentioning is that I'm looking at tape at Veretennikov, and he's going against some guys that never going to be in the UFC, guys that aren't really worth mentioning, but he's not looking incredibly dominant. There's one fight in particular, Luis Iniguez, where this dude looks like a very thin, unhealthy 170. He's not bigger than Veretennikov. He just looked kind of scrawny, to be frank. Didn't look as strong. And he was reversing Veretennikov in the second round. He was not looking too bad. He was landing some shots on him. Ultimately, he got knocked out. But I'm thinking, yo, what if this was Danny Barlow, say, reversing you, and then he starts landing shots on you, elbows, punches, you're going to be shooting for a terrible takedown at this point. And if you're kind of looking that weird, and I'm not saying he looked terrible against this Iniguez, but it was surprising to me that a guy that strong in that second round was kind of allowing that. But yeah, it's an interesting fight because if Veretennikov comes out here and fights out of his standard, which is like a striker moving forward, pressure, Terminator style, he reminds me a little bit of Dennis Tululin, just a little bit. Maybe that might be a bit too harsh, but he gives me those vibes where he could be better. He could win these fights, but there's some things about him that aren't allowing him to do so. So for me, I think if Danny can avoid getting clinched and bullied against the cage, get kneed up, get taken down, I think eventually if Veretennikov slows down, especially on short notice, he'll start landing those nasty combos, land that left hand, and make him see God. So I'll go Danny Barlow round number 2, but I am not confident in this one. I'm telling you, I think Veretennikov, he has potential. He has potential to maybe show the skill set plus the experience against Danny. But man, when you get a guy that's that athletic, I mean, I've seen Danny Barlow get taken down a lot and controlled, but the dude fights. The guy, I think, is consistently getting better. Forgot to mention he broke his hand or his forearm against Quinlan and never showed it. Never showed it once in that fight, and he ended up knocking him out with that left hand that was broken. So the dude's a fighter. I like his cardio. I like the just speed of him, his athleticism, and despite being less than complete, that will take him pretty damn far up until he fights someone really fucking good. So I'll go with Barlow, second round knockout. Next bout, we've got here at bantamweight, Charalampos Gregorio versus Toshimi Kazama, the silent finisher. Yeah. Plus 155. Come back on. Gregorio is minus 185. It's crazy that a guy who's been finished twice in the UFC, a guy who doesn't look like he belongs in the UFC, a guy who, if I'm being frank, I'm picking Gregorio, a guy who, when I look at him, he's got skills, right? He brown belt in jiu-jitsu, very good ground game. He's training at a Bang Tao, trying to work on his striking. He doesn't seem like he has that kind of power or that kind of skill to match these monsters that aren't Japanese. So without trying to be disrespectful, when you get a certain type of fighter in a certain region, let's just say Japan, we can also use Brazil. You can get some guys that are masters at one particular thing, and they're beating their competition, like the Japanese guys beating Japanese guys or Brazilian guys beating Brazilian guys. But when you make it to an international stage, because this dude fought in Pancrase specifically, I think, for a majority of his tenure, and then he did fight in the road to UFC. And let me see here. I want to make sure before I start talking mad shit on him, before we start another World War II incident. I don't think they can handle another atomic. But yeah, he fought primarily in Pancrase. And there's certain styles that work there, right? You're gonna fight guys that, traditional Japanese martial arts, judo, jujitsu, some kickboxing, but you can use your skills to beat them. Maybe you're not going to get hit as hard because maybe the guys you're fighting don't have ridiculous power. Some of them aren't the best finest steroids, shit like that. And it seems to me that Kazama is the benefactor of that. Like he's fighting a lot of Japanese guys who he can just take down, submit. He's not in threat of power. He's just not used to having like American wrestling styles or just massive dudes beating the shit out of you. And what I've seen is that when he fought a true freak in Rinya Nakamura, just making sure that's correct. Rinya showed him like, yo, you ain't at that level. He knocked him the fuck out. He fought Garrett Armfield, and again, I've always said I'm still waiting on those people who've been watching to PayPal me after telling them max bet Garrett Armfield. Oh, geez. Running joke. But yeah, Garrett Armfield schooled him easily. He was able to stuff takedowns, and then we saw what he did with those hands, just battered him. I'm talking more about Kazama because Charlampu should win this one by knockout in the first round. He has the power. He's got the strength. He's the more physical guy. He trains out of a good team in Serra-Longo. He's not going to get like out grappled to the point where like, oh my God, his back is taken and he's going to get choked out like shit. If he's not having Aljamain do that to him every single day, then what is he doing here? He had a terrible outing his last fight. And the reason for it is that he fought a much more experienced, well-rounded guy with better cardio, and he made him the bitch in that fight. And by that I mean he was not the better striker, so it made Charlampu fight out of position, going for takedowns, gassing himself out. He looked really bad, but it's crazy because I've seen this guy go 5 rounds, but he has to be the bully. And if he's not the bully against Kazama here, and he will be, he absolutely will be, but if he's not the bully and Kazama starts landing on him, which I'll be surprised, I still don't think that's going to really affect Gregoru. I still think he'll move forward Terminator style and land some hard shots on Kazama. I'd be surprised if Kazama bullies Gregoru. I just don't see it happening. He's just not as good as Anheliger. Anheliger was highly undervalued in that spot because of how the perception of him was. And Gregoru got a knockout in the contender series over Cameron Smotherman, who I still think Smotherman's way better than Gregoru. Just shit like that happens. But man, you go back and you watch tape on him. When Gregoru is the better fighter and when he's the bully, and I expect him to do that here, he doesn't gas. He mixes in takedowns. He's so physically strong. And Kazama being like a lesser fighter in my eyes, and I hate saying that, I think he's going to get knocked out again. And if he doesn't in the first round, I think Gregoru's going to just style on him and be the more physically imposing dude and just batter Kazama, who does not react well to getting hit by just better competition. I'm going Gregoru by round number 1 knockout. Next bout, we've got Alan Nascimento versus Rafael Fialho. I did my research on this just to make sure because realistically for me, if I'm being honest, I look at Nascimento primarily as a grappler. And despite the fact, and here's what's nuts, I've done my research on Nascimento, but he fights so infrequently, I forget everything about him. All I remember is he can take your back and he's good at jiu-jitsu, but I completely forgot he is more so a kickboxer. He started off as a kickboxer, allegedly, and I was like, huh, that's weird, because he's so unbelievably slow. He is just not as effective with the punches. He's a decent kicker on the outside. He hits hard with the kicks, but to me, he's more of a developed wrestler jiu-jitsu guy compared to the jiu-jitsu kickboxing of Fialho. And this is Nova União and Fialho versus Chutabox and Nascimento. And they're both around the same size, 5'8", 5'7", 1 inch advantage in reach for Nascimento. Fascinating fight because on the feet, I think Fialho's more clean, hits harder, he mixes things up well, but wrestling wise, Nascimento will have that. And on top of that, I think jiu-jitsu wise, Nascimento's just so much better. Despite I think they're both black belts, I think Nascimento is just constantly rolling with Charles and the guys at Chutabox, that he is developing better ways to take the back. His scrambles from the bottom, his sweeps from the bottom are very good. I just think at this point, despite being minus 210, I think Nascimento is the play. My biggest worry with Nascimento always is because he's a big dude. I think he cuts a ton of weight to make 125. Will he gas out? He hasn't gassed out yet. I'll tell you a story. Um, when he fought Carlos Hernandez, because I picked against him twice, I was thinking, what is the best way Carlos can win this fight? And that's like, hey, you tire out Nascimento, hit him to the body, avoid getting taken down, and I think Hernandez could win. He got submitted easily, very easily, got the back taken, choked out. So I was like trying to find evidence of Nascimento ever getting, exhausted. I went back and watched his contender series fight in Brazil with Paiva, and although I think that Nascimento didn't look great there, he never gassed. It's just he showed inexperience. He showed a lot of eagerness to go for submissions other than maintaining control and winning the fight opposed to like wanting to finish the fight. So I think that's what he's learned and he's gotten better at. And the Jake Hadley fight showed that, getting him to the ground, controlling him there, getting swept himself, and then re-sweeping for Fialho. I think he's going to come out here very aggressive moving forward. But Nascimento's never really been hurt. And ultimately, I think Fialho can get taken down. And let me check the stats on them. Because with the UFC stats that I'm looking up, it's kind of inaccurate because it just takes their, I think, UFC total combined fight time and its stats. And it'll say here that Nascimento averages for 1.5 takedowns a minute, which I thought would have been a bit higher. And his takedown accuracy is shit, 26% compared to 33 of Fialho, and 16% defense compared to the 55 for Fialho, which is nuts because he got taken down. I think it's more so Nascimento accepting being on the bottom because of his jiu-jitsu, but here he should definitely be the one pursuing the takedown. For Fialho, I think him getting choked out by Mokaev, if he can get choked out by Mokaev, I think Nascimento can definitely take his back, control him, and work those submissions. But I don't love the line. I think this is a very close fight. As I mentioned earlier, when it comes to like Brazilian fighters versus Brazilian fighters, they can be a little bit closer just because they have the same general skill set, jiu-jitsu plus, like the Japanese fighters, like jiu-jitsu plus what else? And here I think the wrestling of Nascimento is what's going to come into play. I think the sweeps of Nascimento, the size, the strength of him is what's going to lead him to get this decision, possibly get a submission along the way. Fialho, tough guy. I think he's going to be the better striker. And maybe Nascimento here can get exposed, but I think if Nascimento's not getting controlled off of his back, which he's nasty off of his back, uh, I think he wins this fight. Just I'd rather not touch it. I'd rather just enjoy the fun scrambles. Next bout here, featherweight. Why is this on the main card? Yana Santos, formerly Kunitskaya, versus Chelsea Chandler. Chelsea C Cup Chandler minus 125 for Santos. Come back on Chandler plus 105. This is a fascinating bout because I think Yana does everything that Chelsea does, just better at a higher level. Fought the better competition. She has fought at featherweight more so. I think she's won a title at featherweight. And I mean, she's fought former champions. She's fought literally almost every featherweight champion ever. Let me make sure before I talk out of my ass. She's fought let's see here. Chris Cyborg. She lost to Holly Holm, bantamweight champion, fought for the title. Oh no, she didn't fight. I thought she fought Amanda at one point. I guess not. But anyways, what Santos does well is hold you against the cage, kind of out grapple you, throws a ton of volume as of late. She's gotten a little bit more aggressive lately. It's for a specific reason, but it no longer applies. I used to say because she was ingesting a certain type of fluid from a specific former UFC fighter, her husband, that was giving her more aggression. But maybe now with Santos Maheta being more of like he's no longer the same dude. Maybe his T levels have dropped. Maybe that's going to hinder Santos. I don't know. It's a tough fight because with Chelsea Chandler, she had to cut weight to make 135. What the fuck? It says featherweight 135. What the fuck? Featherweight's 145. So I need to actually make sure what what this is going to be at, because if it's at bantamweight, maybe this is a typo, but if it's at bantamweight, that's a completely different matchup, which Santos is going to win easily because Chandler looks awful at bantamweight. At featherweight, she is more replenished. She hits a little bit harder. She's still technically crap, but she's got jujitsu. But I don't think she can get off of her back. But she has more pop in her punches, and she's got a bit of a mean streak. But man, she is really hard to watch sometimes because her fight with Josiane Nunes, she was getting backed up by the smaller girl, and she just has horrible reactions to getting hit sometimes. So I'm not a fan of that. Let me quickly check here to make sure what the hell is happening. Because if it's at featherweight, it complicates things a bit, which I was going to talk about. But if it's at 135, again, it's saying featherweight 135. That's confusing. So let me check the UFC website. Let's see. Let's check Wikipedia. Wikipedia says this is at bantamweight. So yeah, this is a lie. So it's at bantamweight. With being bantamweight, I think Yana just kind of rinses and repeats. Kind of what I mentioned earlier. They're the same essential fighter. I think Chandler's more of an aggressive boxer, likes to clinch up, likes to get it to the ground, use her ground and pound. She does have massive ground and pound. But if Yana gets her to the ground, I don't think Chelsea's going to be able to get back up. I will go Santos by decision. This is one of these like either or. Either or can win. I'm just saying what Chelsea does well is kind of box and jiu-jitsu. Trains out of Cesar Gracie. But yeah, she does not really look good at bantamweight when she's forced to cut that weight. Even then, she still looks a little juiced up, a little juicy in a good way. You know, she bounces up and down. I like it. But yeah, with Santos, just the experience. I mean, Santos herself, she is not anything to write home about, but it's still, to me, that experience here against Chelsea Chandler, you know, if you can get her to the ground, I don't think she's going to be able to get back up. She'll probably threaten, but not, you know, you're more experienced, Yana. But if Chelsea gets her to the ground, it's just going to be a sloppy affair, man. Mm, I'm curious to see what happens here, but I will go with Santos by decision. I'm just basing this specifically off of just the overall experience, man. If you're having trouble with, like, it's hard to say. Norma Dumont's great. She's been doing great. Josiane Nunes is also, it's a good win, but the only real good win that you had is Stoliarenko. I'm saying like that Josiane Nunes was a terrible fucking win because she got her nose busted up. She looked awful. Like they're just the reactions of her are not good. I mean, we saw what Norma did to her, hit her so hard she tried to travel back in time. It was just not good. And a similar thing happened with Nunes. Like Nunes hit her and she just kind of ran away. Like those negative reactions are really going to play in the judge's eyes. So if Chelsea cannot get a takedown and if Yana just keeps her in the clinch and does what Yana does, it's going to be Yana's fight easily. So moving on. Chepe Mariscal versus Damon Jackson. So minus 245 for Chepe. Come back on Damon is plus 200. Damon is, man, let me just say this right now. Full head of hair Damon, uh, rejuvenated hairline Jackson is gonna make a title run, and it might start in this fight. It might start the next fight, but this dude is fighting with a confidence to him, with a swag to him. I've been impressed by him. When I saw his fight against Hernandez, there was a moment at the end which I thought was really funny. Like Jackson clearly dominated 2 rounds. He got dropped in the third. He recovered, took him down, and he clearly won the fight. And then Hernandez is putting his hands up like, yeah, like I won. Jackson's walking around like they're doing laps around each other and shit like they usually do when the fight's over. They do a victory lap to like present to the judges. And then Jackson walks by him and says, put your arm down, as in like, you didn't win this fight. I thought that was really fucking funny. And I'm like, yo, that new hairline is giving this guy some major confidence. So Damon Jackson, good wrestler, good grappler, ever improving striking, but chin has always been an issue. And there's just ways to beat Damon Jackson. Chepe, massive, absolute dog. The dude fights I want to emphasis by when I say he fights dirty, not like he pokes or grabs or he pulls or tries to like molest people in the cage like a Makayev does. When I say dirty, I mean he's dirty because he makes things grimy. He will slap you, he will elbow you, he will just I like the way he fights. Put it to you that way. He may not be the most skilled dude, but the dude goes out there and he performs and he makes things really hard on you. He can wrestle, he can grapple. He's got good punches, good kicks. He hits hard, good chin, or should I say, he's been knocked out a ton of times. I remember having a comment where I mentioned something like passing, like, oh yeah, he's been knocked out a handful of times or a good amount of times, and you don't know what you're talking about? I'm like, yeah, he's been knocked out a few times. A couple of those were like suspect, but the burrito fight was nasty. And on top of that, when he got put in a position against Gregor Gillespie, Gregor, um, he flattened him out, was like pounding him a little bit, but he went fully flat. I think it was a good stoppage, and it's more so the presentation of that can be a problem here. So I look at that. Gregor Gillespie's a much better wrestler at that time than Damon Jackson, but Damon does present a lot of issues here for Chepe. If he can just hold him against the cage, he's a bigger dude. He's 5'11" compared to the 5'7". Chepe has power, but I don't think he has the type of massive power to knock out Damon or to really hurt him. I think it's going to be a Chepe Mariscal dogfight where he's going to push forward. He's going to make this grimy. He's going to retaliate after getting taken down and just make it a really tough, possibly close fight. Because I really don't know if he has that kind of power to knock out Jackson. I mean, Chepe is a judo black belt, jiu-jitsu black belt. He's got a black belt in these hands and a black belt in whipping ass. And Jackson, again, he's not anything particularly special, but he has shown improvements over his long career, 23-6. So I like to always emphasize, do not count out Damon Jackson ever, because the dude will surprise you. Fucking front face kicked that Chinny Sabatini and then finished him off. I mean, that was not expected, but it was hilarious. And in this case, like I wouldn't be surprised if he can get Chepe down, control him for a bit, use his body and his wrestling. But ultimately, I think Chepe is going to get back to the feet, make it dirty, elbow him off of his back if he needs to, reverse him, maybe even go for submissions himself. That's the kind of fighter Chepe is. So you can never count him out. And in the way I'm thinking, I'm like, I can't bet him at these odds, minus 245. There's a lot of threat here with a big dude that can wrestle like that. And with Chepe in his last fight, and I have to admit, like with the Morgan Charrier fight, I'm watching it live. I thought he got robbed. I thought Charrier won, but going back and watching it again, Chepe round number one, Charrier round number two, round number three was a close round that I think Chepe edged out by presenting that kind of dog mentality, where in some cases people might try to reverse after getting taken down and go for a choke or something. He was just like spamming hammer fists and punches, and that's the kind of shit that I want to see against Damon Jackson. So I am going to pick him to win by a decision. I think he could get a knockout, but again, he hasn't really shown that kind of knockout power in the UFC against competition, right? And Damon's not the most strong chin dude, but when I look at the guys that have knocked him out as of late, that's what kind of makes me think I don't know if Chepe has that kind of power, because the last people to knock out Damon Jackson have been Dan Ige, who has ridiculous power, and especially if his wife is knocked up, he has extra power. And Ilia Topuria put his lights out, and I don't think Chepe has either of their kind of power. So I will go Chepe by decision. I think that this could be a little bit closer. And what I am worried about is that sometimes, and I throw this out in the ether because you kind of hear the narratives after the fight. Essentially, what I'm getting at is, oh, this is retaliation for that robbery for Charrier. If Damon Jackson, say, wins by getting a reversal on the ground and getting some top control, where I think Chepe still won the fight via damage. Shit like that is what I'm most worried about in this fight. I don't think it's going to be, oh my God, Chepe's going to come out here and knock him the fuck out. I think Damon deserves more respect than that. I think it should be lined a little bit closer. The odds themselves have kind of pushed out for me to feel comfortable betting or parlaying Chepe. But knowing the fact that he is going to be the more aggressive dog in this fight, where he's going to put pressure on when he needs to, land the strikes, the low kicks, just the nastiness, the elbows, Chepe is going to win this fight for me. So I'll go Chepe by decision. Next bout here, Javid Basharat versus Chris Gutierrez, the co-main event. Minus 240 for Basharat, comeback on Gutierrez, minus 195. The line does not make a lick of sense to me. How is Basharat coming off of a loss, a legitimate loss to Aiemann Zahabi, still 2-1 favorite essentially over Chris Gutierrez, a guy who's fought better competition, and to me is a step up in competition from Aiemann Zahabi? It's baffling to me. It is, you're fighting close with Aiemann Zahabi. Let's give you Chris Gutierrez, who just had a 5-round main event with Song Yadong, who's top of the heap at the bantamweight division, and we're going to make you the underdog. And granted, Basharat should be the favorite, given a specific thing that I'll get to, but not anywhere close to that. This is like a dogger pass automatically, because with Basharat, he got a little exposed his last fight. And what I mean, a little exposed, like some can make the argument that he beat Aiemann. I will not. I was one of the people that took advantage of that, like plus 400 or so on Zahabi after he visually won round number 2 and he was still plus money. So I'm like, fuck it, let's go. Because he dropped Basharat. Basharat's like, no, I didn't. That was a fucking drop in the end of the round. My biggest concern with Basharat always has been, like, he needs to be the effective striker and grappler every single time. He's a bit of a point fighting style. He doesn't have a whole ton of power in his punches. He can get finishes when he accumulates punches, and he leaves his head exposed often. He doesn't move his head. He's a bit frail to me. It almost seems like he's got like a too thin of a body for bantamweight. Like, he needs to be at featherweight. He's a big boy. He's 5'9", but to me, he just seems a little bit too awkward and ganky. Like, he has a big head and a tiny neck and tiny shoulders. He just needs to bulk up a bit more. He needs to work on his strength and conditioning. But the guy can grapple. The guy can strike. He's a good point striker. But now he's fighting a guy who kicks much harder. He's got great movement, excellent movement. And it could really come down to, if this becomes a point fighting matchup, like, they both move well, but I think Chris Gutierrez does it at a higher level. He's fought the better competition. Frankie Edgar knocked him out. Pedro Munoz, I have to rewatch it, but I still think that there's a case for Gutierrez to win that fight, 29-28. Anyways, Alatang Haley schooled him. The fight with Song Yadong, this is what's baffling to me. I looked at the scorecards, and they said 50-45 across the boards for Song Yadong. I bet Song Yadong in that fight. I was worried out of my mind that Gutierrez was going to sneak out a win. Up until Song started wrestling, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to fucking lose, because Gutierrez was looking good on the feet. He was making Song miss. He was landing kicks. He was feinting a lot. He looked very good. He had the great cardio. But ultimately, no one gave a shit about that, and they still gave every round to Song. So in this case, Javid doesn't have that kind of power against Song. Although he can get takedowns, I think Chris Gutierrez's takedown defense was going to hold up fine here. I think his cardio is going to hold up fine. And what I think is what would be the biggest factor, although this is going to sound fucking stupid, is that when they kick each other from the outside, I think Chris's kicks are going to sound louder, and that's going to be like, whoa, give it to Chris Gutierrez this round. I can almost assure you that I think Basharat's going to try to work wrestling here against Gutierrez. Like, that's usually when he's his best, right? But the competition that he's been fighting has been just, it's not good competition. Even Zahabi, although he's on a 4-fight win streak, he is not what I would consider top competition, and he struggled with him. Whether he wants to admit it or not, he struggled with Zahabi. But let's look at it. Tony Gravely, decisions him. Trevin Jones, decisions him. Two guys that are no longer in the UFC. Mendonça, we saw how shitty Mendonça is. Decisioned him. Victor Henry, he had to kick him in the balls to get out of that fight. He was terrified of him. Zahabi, we saw what happened there. Zahabi just threw harder, and he was winning based off of that. And that's what leads me to think, like, if Gutierrez this is a step up in competition for Basharat, and he's still the favorite. Why are we favoring him that highly? This should be a pick 'em, for God's sake, with a lean on Gutierrez, where we can say Basharat's going to wrestle. Let's take him as a dog. At minus 240, this is a dog or pass, and I'm taking Gutierrez, who's a proven guy. I'm telling you, man, I think he's got a really good chance here. If he gets taken down, well, fuck, we lose. But at plus nearly 200, I'm glad to take that chance at a guy that's going to kick the shit out of Bashrat, kick his legs, flying knee him, just mix things up well, give him probably fits. And I'm thinking Bashrat's going to want to shoot. And if Bashrat shoots terribly like he did against Zahabi, where he was like, oh my God, I got to shoot for my fucking life, I think Gutierrez could take advantage of that and visually beat Zahab or beat Bashrat. So I'm going to take Gutierrez by a decision. I think he's live as hell here. I don't know why we're disrespecting Gutierrez. Like who set this line up? The New Jersey family court system here because of his issues. Like we hate Chris Gutierrez. Make him the big underdog. Fuck him. I think he's live. I am gonna risk it and say Gutierrez. I might take a shot on him. I'm not sure yet because when I say this now, it's like, oh my God, plus 195. That's great. But when I go to the casino, because I really try to avoid betting online just because I do stupid shit. Like today, I bet baseball. Luckily, it ended up working out for me. But baseball tends to be the fucking bane of my existence. But when I go to the casino and he's like plus 140 because people have caught on or something, I'm like, I don't know if I want to take a shot on him. And if I do, it'll probably be a minuscule half unit or something. So I will go with Gutierrez by a decision here. Next bout, we have got Marcin Tybura versus Sergey Spivak 2. Dear Lord, may God have mercy. Two grapplers going at it. So I didn't really write much for my notes on here because what I ultimately wrote down was they're essentially the same fighter, just one is younger, one has cleaner punches, which would be Spivak. Um, again, grapplers, Spivak younger by 9 years, better hands, not really showing a ton of power in them, not enough power to maybe hurt Tybura. Tybura more experience, fought better competition. I think Tybura is just a better overall grappler. We saw in the first fight 4 years ago that Spivak could not get up from bottom. Tybura essentially schooled him because I think Tybura has the better jiu-jitsu. Spivak, I think he's looked better for damn sure. I think his striking has looked better. And he's training at Extreme Couture now. I just don't see him ever really improving enough for me to think, wow, he's going to beat these guys. Like at heavyweight, you can be 40 and you can still be in your prime. And I think Marcin has seen it all. I think he's proven himself. I've counted against him, and I've picked him to lose against every heavy hitter, and he's taken that ass whooping, and he still fought, got the takedown, and got the finish or by the submission. So I can say that Tybura is the more proven guy. As Spivak, man, if you give Spivak any adversity, he'll take that shit. He'll take it every time, and he'll just exit the cage and be like, top of the morning, I'll see you next time. That fight against Gane, yes, he was outmatched by Gane. And I should mention, I remember telling my girlfriend the first time ever, I'm like, yo, man, I put a shit ton of money on Gane to win. I max bet Gane. She was like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm fucking sure. She was like, okay. I'm like, you stupid bitch. Anyways, when I told her that, it was for a reason because what I saw was Spivak could not get the takedown and he just stood there and got his ass beat. He did have some fire back against the cage, but it's almost like a pride thing. Like, no, don't be a quitter. And then he got hit by Gane again. He's like, okay, it's fine if I quit. That was a terrible performance. And what we're looking at is, yes, he's a younger guy. He's been looking decent as of late. But what it comes down ultimately, will he be able to get back up if it becomes a grappling match, which it will? Say he doesn't knock out Tybura, like the odds might. No, they don't indicate that. They're just saying that he's. I don't know what these odds are indicating. I think Tybura should be the favorite. He's plus 100, minus 120 on Spivak. I don't see it. I don't see it. I think he's been given a lot of specific competition for him to look good, and he's not really had that adversity to fight back out of. Let me look at the history of Spivak to kind of give you my thoughts on it. Because he's 16-4. He's a big boy, But yeah, he lost to Cyril Gahn pathetically. He beat the ghost of Derek Lewis. He beat the ghost of Augusto Sakai. Greg Hardy hasn't won a fight in a long time, so like all those already ain't good. Yes, he lost to Aspinall, so there's no shame there. They both lost to him quick. And he's just been fighting specific type of competition that haven't really given him that adversity to make me think that he's going to be able to overcome it. Tybura, on the other hand, we look at him, we've seen him knocked out many a time. Augusto Sakai knocked out Tybura, but before he was fully washed. But we see Tai Tuivasa, he choked him out. He got cut, he got the takedown, he finished him. Uh, Blagoy Ivanov, I think Blagoy's a much better fighter than Spivak. I think Blagoy might give him some fits, right? And I don't think Spivak has fought many grapplers. Tybura has fought nothing but grapplers. He fought Blagoy, Romanov, for God's sake. He beat Romanov. He was able to get back up. His cardio maintained. What else here? Should they both beat Hardy? That's funny. But yeah, I go back and I look, and one particular fight that kind of piqued my interest was another grappler in Fabricio Verdum. He went 5 rounds with Verdum. He's proven to have that 5-round cardio, which Spivak has not. And he survived getting submitted by him. It was, to me, like a respect point for Tybura. Like, I got to start respecting this guy more. But he's just so, if he gets hit by a big puncher, he'll go down. I think all those performances where he's been getting hurt and overcoming that shows me the will he has to win. You have to put him out completely for him to stop fighting. Spivak, not so much. So what I ultimately decided is I think Tybura is going to continue doing the same thing that he did in the first fight, where he's going to strike with him. He's not going to get hit too clean. If Spivak does land on him and knock him out, then fuck, it's fantastic. The Tybura terror train is over, and Spivak's here to reign supreme. But if that doesn't happen, Tybura will get takedowns on Spivak. He'll be heavy on him. If he gets taken down, Tybura, I think he can manage to get back up. I just don't think Spivak will be able to do so. I don't think Spivak is that kind of a guy. And I think eventually, when Spivak is tired, because this is a 5-round fight, which Tybura has been in, and Tybura has shown better cardio, and I believe in elevation when he fought Romanov. Let me make sure. Yep, in elevation, better cardio. I think Tybura can get a finish in the later rounds, 3 or 4. I'm going to say 4. So for me, I'm picking Tybura to get a finish, round number 4, TKO. More than likely, it's going to be a disgusting fat decision for either man. But this is a point for Spivak to show his improvements. But even then, how is he going to finish Tybura? Is he going to finish him on the mat, where he's the best at? I don't think so. I think Tybura is shown to have better jiu-jitsu than Spivak. I think he's shown to have the better will to win than Spivak. I don't see it. I don't see the love for Spivak. I know it's a slight favorite here at -120. I just don't fully get it. I'm willing to be proven wrong. This is what it's all about. Like, I'm fine being wrong. I just do not see it. So if you see something that I don't know, is he on some fine Russian steroids, let me know. I have no idea. Again, I know he's training at Extreme Couture, but that's not the end-all, be-all. That doesn't mean his cardio is going to get better. Doesn't mean he's going to be willing to be able to push through if he gets hurt, or if he gets his eye hurt or some shit. I feel as if Tybura hits him with like a head kick that maybe stumbles him, it is the puncher versus the better kicker. But if Tybura hits him with something, I feel like he'll be blinking his eye out or some shit. Like, I just don't trust Spivak at all, especially when it's another grappler who's already beaten him before and made it essentially look easy. So I'm going with Tybura, round number 4 TKO. That is my thought on that. So yeah, let me know what you think overall of this card. It's not my favorite. Again, it's a heavyweight main event where it's more than likely going to go over. I'll probably look at some props for some of these fights to see if there's, money-making possibilities. Like, I think there's a good chance that Gregorio knocks this kid out, just taken by knockout. Danny Barlow maybe knockout. Over on the Karol Rosa Pannie-Kianzad fight. Over 1.5 rounds for Carl Williams versus Dinez. yeah, it's a funky little card here. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Johnny Tiger Bomb MMA. I will see you for a better card hopefully next week.